Hello everyone. You can see from my nose I got a little bit of sun. I was out kayaking for hours the other day. It was fun, a fun solitary activity. It's one of those things I like to do by myself, which is what convinces me about my INTJ-ness, whether or not you believe in the whole Myers-Briggs jive. So much of the INTJ profile really fits me to a T. I was out kayaking all by myself, all by my lonesome on the lagoons of South Carolina, and it was a blast for me, except I got burned in certain places on my body. My nose and my legs also got it pretty bad, particularly the thigh area. I just didn't think to give myself protection there. One of those things. Live and learn. I want to talk today about the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, because I've made reference to this before. I made reference to this before when I was talking about the flat earth whole idea, and those who are of a, for lack of a better term, Christian fundamentalist bent. I know fundamentalist is probably not a word that is embraced by many who are, it's a hostile sounding word. I don't mean it in a hostile way. I'm just trying to categorize this group of people who are very strictly religious, tend to be Protestant, tend to be believers in biblical inerrancy, and I talked about this before last time, and who now, this wasn't the case in the 80s, the 90s, or the aughts, as far as I knew, but who now have this kind of hostility towards anything that smacks of Galilean, Copernican cosmology, believing in Earth as a sphere rotating around a sun, being the third planet in a solar system, being part of a galaxy. These are all things that they tend to think are harmful to belief, harmful to faith, and are untrue. And I talked in the last video on this subject, Whence Flat Earth, about this entire phenomenon. But I wanted to talk today, because it's relevant to all of this, about C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, which I do recommend. Out of the Silent Planet is the first book in the trilogy. Paralandra is the second. And That Hideous Strength is the third and final book in the trilogy. Now, the reason I bring this up is because C.S. Lewis is generally thought of as a reliable, faithful Christian, and he's somebody who, even though he wasn't exactly a fundamentalist, he was certainly a conservative Christian thinker, who was opposed to modernism, who was opposed to materialism, who was opposed to all the pernicious modern trends, generally thought of as reliable. I remember the Chronicles of Narnia were very highly praised by just about everybody who was of this sort of Bible Belt fundamentalist Christian bent that I knew. And again, I grew up in Georgia, not of Georgia stock, but I knew a lot of people who kind of fit this profile, and they all loved C.S. Lewis. Now, I don't know if today there's more of a hypercriticality of anyone and everyone, and I'm almost positive that today there are people of a Christian, these same kind of people who think that C.S. Lewis is actually a pernicious influence, all these things for all these reasons. I'm almost positive that that's the case today, just because things are much more scrutinized and there's just, everybody's got an opinion about everything, and everybody's expressing an opinion all the time on the internet about everything. This is something in the the latest Bo Burnham feature, which maybe I'll talk about some other time. That he has a song about that, about how everybody believes everything all the time. You can find whatever you're looking for on the internet. So anyway, all this is to preface my remarks on C.S. Lewis and his space trilogy, which is less known than the Chronicles of Narnia, but still fairly known, fairly famous. I just never got around to reading them until recently. So C.S. Lewis sets his space trilogy in the same Galilean Copernican cosmology that is believed in by many secularists, but it's not a problem for Lewis. And in fact, he imaginatively displays a couple of things in this trilogy. The first book in the trilogy, and I think they were written before he wrote the Narnia books. In the first book, there is the hero of the trilogy, Ransom is his name. That name obviously is supposed to have metaphorical meaning. He gets kidnapped by a couple of bad men and taken to another planet, which is called Malacandra by the natives, and we figure out that it's actually Mars, what the planet we know as Mars. Now, when Lewis wrote this, there wasn't the same kind of research on Mars, and we didn't know that Mars was basically a barren rock. So in Lewis's imagination, it becomes this planet that's inhabited by intelligent beings, by in fact 3 races of intelligent life. But in Lewis's notion, in Lewis's theology, his whole interest in the Christian notion of original sin as applies to humanity, he explores this world in which these beings, these creatures, never fell. They were intelligent beings, but they never knew sin. And so for the humans who are meeting them, particularly the 2 bad guys who are filled with all of these terrible notions and ideas, fed by modernism, who are out there to conquer, and subdue and destroy the life that is there, and colonize the planet and make it into an extension of the British Empire, essentially. There's very much a contrast between them and the natives, but there's also a contrast between Ransom, the hero, and the natives, and that he struggles to understand them, and they struggle to understand him, and they have a word for people, for those who go astray. They call them bent. So it's interesting. All of this is set on Mars, and then the second book is set on a planet called Paralandra, which is actually Venus, and it's this sort of fantastical, mystical world, lush in vegetation and kind of magical in the way that it functions, as far as the oceans and the land kind of melding together, and the much of the land being like these floating islands. And in that book, there is a woman who is sort of like going to be the Eve of this world, who hasn't fallen yet, and one of the evil men tries to tempt her in the same way that the serpent did in the garden. I haven't read enough. I haven't finished it yet, so I don't know whether he succeeds or not. But I know Ransom is there also, and trying, for his part, to prevent her from falling. And so there are all kinds of interesting ideas spun into this the storyline. The creature, the woman on Mars, on Venus, that we meet is kind of like an Eve, but also kind of like a Marian figure in some ways. She's waiting. She has this like direct communion with God, and she's just waiting for essentially her Adam to arrive. Ransom can't be her Adam because he's from Earth, which is already fallen. He's already a fallen man. But anyway, this whole drama unfolds on Venus / Paralandra. Now, I've yet to finish the second book yet, and I've yet to read the third book, which I've heard a little bit about. I understand is this kind of apocalyptic clash between the Christians and the modernist secularists who are filled to the brim with all of these pernicious and destructive ideas that seemingly to their mind give them permission to colonize and subdue and destroy other life. So what interests me, though, the reason why I'm mentioning this entire trilogy in the context of the flat Earth notion, the flat Earth, the phenomenon of people coming to believe in flat Earth and coming to think that all belief in space and in the solar system and in the Copernican cosmology is just this pernicious trend that is built upon lies, and that will only lead man astray. I would invite those who feel this way to check out C.S. Lewis's space trilogy and see if it doesn't change your mind, not about whether or not the Earth is flat and all of that, because again, I'm not really interested in having that debate. It's an interesting debate to have, but I'm not up for it here. It's not not really my thing. But I do think that, like, I understand if your exposure to space drama, science fiction, space stuff, is either Star Wars or Star Trek. Neither of those works of fiction, neither of them are Christian in orientation. Star Wars is, of course, mystical, and I'm talking about the real Star Wars here. The good Star Wars that I'm actually a fan of. Not Disney Star Wars, but the real Star Wars, the Golden Age Star Wars. That's, animated by an entirely different notion, an entirely different theology that is obviously not the Christian one. George Lucas was and is, I think, a rather new agey kind of thinker. There's a lot of Taoism type stuff. There's the Joseph Campbell influence and all of that. Whereas Star Trek is just like humanism, human perfection, almost to the point of boredom, like man just going to the stars after having nearly perfected himself and gotten rid of poverty and gotten rid of disease and just, it's sort of like the like the one satirist said, we're the vegetarian space, we're the vegetarian space travelers who are always right about everything. They're just kind of, the Federation is just kind of annoying, really. But all of that aside, if your exposure to space stuff is Star Wars or Star Trek, and I think you can be I don't know why you can't, personally, I don't know why you can't have your beliefs and still enjoy fiction that is not precisely structured. The world of that fiction does not accord fully, or even, partly even necessarily with your beliefs. You can still enjoy it. Like, can't you enjoy, reading ancient mythology? Can't you enjoy the Iliad and the Odyssey and I don't know, the ancient Sumerian text, Epic of Gilgamesh, which I remember I tried to sort of teach a class in online last year. That was kind of an ill-fated experiment. But anyway, can't you enjoy that stuff and still, not believe that the theology that it preaches, or that it embodies, that is a part of it? Can't you reject that theology and still take it for what it is? I just kind of have a hard time understanding that, unless it's something that's obviously hostile to your beliefs, like the His Dark Materials trilogy. I understood that to be, directly hostile to Christianity. But I have a harder time understanding just not being able to like Star Wars, because the Force is not God, as we understand it. But if you are of that bent, if you are of that, if that's your way of viewing things, I would invite you to check out C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, because he's got everything set in this framework that a lot of fundamentalist type thinkers now, fundamentalists for lack of a better word, believers in biblical inerrancy, believers in the notion that the Bible was, or that the earth was created in 6 days, 6,000 years ago, and so forth, who now increasingly seem to be, or a large subset of them anyway, seem to be believing in this flat earth notion, that there is no space at all, and that we live under the dome, under the firmament, and the sun and the moon are not celestial bodies at all, but and all the rest that goes with it. I mean, so I definitely would be interested to hear what anyone has to say about any of this, whatever your perspective, whatever your point of view. If you are someone who believes in flat Earth, have you read the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, and do you reject it? Do you think that Lewis was a phony? I don't know. And if you haven't read it, again, would you be interested in reading it and seeing if maybe this whole notion of space could still be in accord with your beliefs? I don't know. Interested to hear what anybody has to say. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki, and check out my work at altrightnovelist.com.